prove myself to him and my capabilities and what I've been able to do for this game. And
it has been an absolutely disastrous season for the Los Angeles Lakers. There's no denying that. We made many videos about it, and I'm sure at this point you've heard about it plenty of times. But what's surprising is it seemed like at first everyone agreed unanimously that the reason why the Los Angeles Lakers were struggling was because the makeup of the roster was fundamentally flawed. And I don't think that's a bold take at all whatsoever. You could be a 12-year-old playing NBA 2K22, my league, and you would be able to look at the Los Angeles Lakers roster and say, apart from LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Russell Westbrook, this team is poorly constructed. Yes, of course, Carmelo Anthony was able to turn back the clock at times. Malik Monk most definitely outplayed his contract, and for the brief 5 minutes that we saw Kendrick Nunn on the court, it was absolutely magical. But apart from that, the Lakers have been a disaster this past year. And what's even scarier is the fact that it doesn't seem like they want to break up the big three anytime soon. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. This video is sponsored by DraftKings. Hoops fans, the latest offer from DraftKings is just way too good to pass up. New customers could bet $5, and if they win, they could turn that $5 into $150 worth of free bets. It's not often where you get 30-to-1 odds on any basketball team to win their next playoff game, and that's some fantastic value. I'm sure we could all agree that these games are significantly more enjoyable when there is the prospect of potentially making money watching something that you love. And there's no better way to maximize your earnings than with DraftKings same-game parlays. DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also bet on the NBA with same-game parlays, which combines multiple bets from the same game for an even bigger payout. And right now, when you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use my promo code TheFlightMike, you can bet $5 and win $150 worth of free bets. That's promo code TheFlightMike at DraftKings Sportsbook. And thank you, DraftKings, for the sponsorship. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The Los Angeles Lakers had a huge issue on their hands over this past year. Originally, the plan was last season for the Lakers to trade some of their depth in the form of Kyle Kuzma, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Montrezl Harrell. Maybe they're able to keep one of those players, who knows, in order to get players like Buddy Hield and DeMar DeRozan on the roster. Yeah, DeMar DeRozan was a free agent and an aging free agent at that. And of course, he wasn't as big of a sexy name as Russell Westbrook, meaning that he hasn't won a NBA MVP and isn't technically considered to be a superstar in this league. This is of course prior to this past year, where he had a magical season this past year. LeBron James and Anthony Davis opted for the Lakers to trade for Russell Westbrook. Immediately following that, there was just a horrific scheme fit for the Lakers. I mean, offensively, the big three of Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, and LeBron James couldn't click. On top of that, Anthony Davis regressed mightily. As a matter of fact, shooting an obscene 19% from three this past year. Bear in mind, he's a career 30% three-point shooter from three, and that's when he was healthy. The problem was with Anthony Davis, if you combine the past 2 seasons, he's only played 76 games. So it seems like the wheels were falling off the wagon at this point. And when your top players start to get injured, and when your top players just can't perform well together, you typically look to the bench for at least a little bit of support to potentially get you from a team that, yeah, maybe you don't finish in the top 4 or top 5 in the West, but at the very minimum, you make it to the NBA playoffs and you try to make it work out there. Unfortunately for the Los Angeles Lakers, they didn't really have that deep of a bench. And ultimately, this team was not even able to make it to the play-in. Now, what's even more comical is they don't even have their lottery draft pick from this year because they lost their lottery pick in the Anthony Davis trade. Laker fans should just be thankful that this pick, which is going to become the number 8th overall pick in the NBA draft, didn't turn out to be the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft, because I would have literally screamed. So now the issue is, how do the Lakers improve? Well, one of the biggest problems is the fact that Russell Westbrook's value took a bit of a tumble as a result of this past season. I mean, this man was jeered and booed and shamed by analysts, fans, and honestly every single individual that was watching Laker basketball this past year. But slowly a brand new narrative was beginning to form. Russell Westbrook Westbrook was pointing the blame finger at the coaching staff, and he even came out to say that, "I think it's unfortunate, to be honest, because I've never had an issue with any of my coaches before." He said this via ESPN's Dave McMenamin. "I'm not sure what his issue was with me, or I'm not sure why, but I can't really give you an answer to why we really never connected." Essentially, the Lakers were forced into this situation of choosing between Frank Vogel and Russell Westbrook. And although Russell Westbrook didn't necessarily work out with Frank Vogel didn't necessarily do the best job this year adjusting with the Los Angeles Lakers. But at the same time, could you really blame him? How do you make Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Russell Westbrook work with one another, especially when Anthony Davis can't stretch the floor and Russell Westbrook is having an average three-point shooting season, which is about 29.8%, and his career average is 30.5%. So an argument could be made for both sides, and ultimately it seemed like the Los Angeles Lakers opted to fire Frank Vogel. Now, at the time, we didn't know if that meant that the Lakers were going to retain Russell Westbrook. There were some trades available for the Lakers should they wanted to take this path and move on from Russell Westbrook. The most famous one being the fact that the Indiana Pacers would potentially trade Malcolm Brogdon and Buddy Hield for Russell Westbrook. Malcolm Brogdon's a two-way point guard. He has no problem shooting the three. Buddy Hield has no problem shooting the three. This gives the Lakers depth and two shooters to put alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The Indiana Pacers, meanwhile, could take Russell Westbrook, use him as a mentor to Tyrese Halliburton, and potentially take this opportunity to build up his value and flip him to another team. Well, it seems like that's not necessarily what's going to happen. According to The Athletic's Sam Amick, which, bear in mind, The Athletic is Shams Charania's platform as well, so Sam Amick is a fairly reputable individual, and The Athletic is just a source that I trust in general. Despite the widely held belief that the Lakers would find a way to trade Westbrook before the start of next season, sources say that their coaching candidates have been asked to discuss how they would use him in their system during interviews. The takeaway for candidates, it seems, is that maximizing Russell Westbrook's presence after his disastrous 2021 to 2022 season is considered an important part of this job. Now, bear in mind, we've also heard a bunch of other bizarre things. I mean, Bill Plaschke of the Los Angeles Times said on the Doug Gottlieb show that, "I've heard that Phil Jackson would like LeBron James traded. I've just heard that, but I've got nothing to back that up. No on-the-record stuff to back that up. I do know that Phil would like to keep Westbrook and try to make that work with him." I'm going to be honest, man, LeBron James is not getting traded. I'm just going to say that right away. There's no one that's more in control of their career than LeBron James. I hate whenever these analysts just go after the, "Whoa, the Lakers should trade LeBron James" narrative. It's just such low-hanging fruit to try to drum up some BS narrative that is never going to happen, respectfully. Now, of course, LeBron James could leave the Lakers, but that's if he opts to not re-sign with the Lakers once his contract expires. Now Amick continues to say that if LeBron James ultimately decides against signing an extension with the Lakers in August, sources say that Jeanie Buss wouldn't see his desire to play out the final season of his contract as a reason to consider trading him. Right away, just you could write off the whole idea that LeBron James could get traded. So far, all we know is that the Los Angeles Lakers fired Frank Vogel, and the individual that they want to bring on as their next head coach, be it Juwan Howard, Kenny Atkinson, who they've already conducted an interview with, which I am absolutely a huge fan of, but I don't think he's the right fit for the job, primarily because he's more of a developmental head coach that is great for coaching young players. But I don't know if Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving wanted their own guy, but once KD healed up and he was ready to play, the Brooklyn Nets decided to fire Kenny Atkinson and bring in Steve Nash, or if it was the fact that Kenny Atkinson just wasn't fit for the job. But needless to say, I think he's one of the best head coaches in the NBA, especially if you're a rebuilding team, and I'm a huge fan of his. I mean, just look at what he did with D'Angelo Russell on the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the one thing we know for sure is Rob Pelinka made it clear that the team was going to take their time with the search, and that one of the most important coaching qualities would be gravitas. That suggests a coach with experience, but several of the first-year candidates they've been linked to are former players that are known to command respect. Now, some of the candidates include Milwaukee Bucks assistant Darvin Ham and former Portland Trail Blazers head coach Terry Stotts as the two early favorites. There's also Charles Lee, who could be another target for the Los Angeles Lakers. So it seems like they are completely out on the idea of trading Russell Westbrook. But my question at that point would be, how on earth are you going to build a roster around this team? I mean, you guys tried for one season to see if Russell Westbrook can make it work with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and yeah, they didn't play together for a majority of the season, but when they did play together, it wasn't necessarily the greatest basketball product either. I mean, I think from an X's and O's standpoint, the fit of Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis doesn't work. The amount of money allocated to those three makes it impossible for this team to have any depth whatsoever. When you currently look at the conference finals for the NBA this year, all of these teams are known for having tremendous depth. Maybe the Dallas Mavericks less than the Golden State Warriors, Boston Celtics, and Miami Heat, but that's the formula to success in the modern day NBA. You do want your star players, but at the same time, you want a deep bench that you can depend on. So I don't really know how I feel about the Los Angeles Lakers' current plan. Let me know in the comment section down below. Should they try to make it work with Russell Westbrook, or should they trade him? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.